So now that we know how to graph equations in slope-intercept form, let's write some equations in that form. So by the end of the lesson, you should be able to do that if I give you a slope and 1 point, and then also do it if I give you 2 points. So let's start with the easier one. Write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form with a slope of 3 that passes through the point 2, 1. So remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And we need two things. We need a slope and we need the y-intercept. We're given a slope, but we're not given a y-intercept. So that's what makes this a little more difficult than what we did before. So let's plug in what we do know. We know the slope is going to be 3, but we still have to find that b. Now, in order to do that, we can use this point. Since this point is on the line, this is a specific x value, and this is a specific y value. Now we could go and graph this and give it a slope of 3 and find where it crosses the y-axis, or we can do it algebraically. And what we're going to do is we're going to plug these values in for x and y. So I'm going to plug in y as 1, I'm going to plug in x as 2, and we're going to algebraically find b. So if you simplify this, you get this equation right here. You need b to make this equation work because this point is on that line. So all I have to do is subtract 6 from both sides, and I get that b equals -5. So now that I have this and my slope, all I got to do is plug it into my equation. And this equation right here has a slope of 3. We can see that. And then if we were to graph it, it would pass through the point 2, 1. Let's try one more together. So remember, start off plugging in the slope because that fits nice in the equation. So it's -1x plus b. And then you're going to replace the x and the y in the equation with the x and the y in the point. So -7 equals -1 times 4 plus b. If we simplify this and then do some algebra, we end up with b is -3. So now my equation becomes y equals -1x minus 3. Not too bad. So that was the very first objective. Hopefully we can do that now. So now the second one says I'm just going to give you 2 points. So instead of giving you the slope, I'm giving you 2 points. But remember, with 2 points, we can find the slope. And then it puts us right back where we were. So write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form. Remember, that's y equals mx plus b. That passes through 2, 4 and 3, 1. So the first thing we need to do is find the slope of this line. So remember, slope has a formula, and it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Let's call this my first point and this one my second point, just because that's how they came in the problem. So my second y value is 1, and I'm going to subtract my first y value, which is 4. My second x value is 3 minus 2. So I get -3 over 1, which is -3. So now this problem is basically the same as the one before. I have enough information for this, but now I need to find the b. And in order to do this, the awesome thing is you can pick either point. So let's pick this one because it's first. Plug in this for x and this for y. Do some algebra. And we get 10. Now I want to prove that it doesn't matter what point we pick. You only ever have to do one, but what if I would have picked this point? I still start off with this, but when I plug in these numbers for x and y, I get 1 equals -3 times 3 plus b. But then we can see if we do a little algebra, add 9 to both sides, we still get 10. So it doesn't matter what point you pick, you should end up with the same thing. So this equation is y equals -3x plus 10. So we have this table that shows the number of domestic flights in the U.S. from 2004 to 2008. We need to write an equation that could be used to predict the number of flights if the trend continues. So whenever you're given years like this that are huge numbers, we tend to shorten them. Just like these flights are in millions, we're not actually writing all of this out. We're just saying 9.97 million. So for the years that we're going to use, we're going to say years after 2000. So when we plug stuff in, we're just going to plug in 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. No need to plug in those big giant numbers. So the first thing we have to do is find the slope, just like before. And in order to do that, I'm going to take my first point and my last point and not really worry about any of them in between. So I have 4, 9.97, and then 8, 9.37. So if we find our slope, let's do this little L thing, subtract these numbers, we get 0.6. 4 minus 8, I get -4. And if we divide these, we end up with -0.15. Now, usually I would say we need to turn this into a fraction, but because they gave us things in decimals, it's okay to leave it. So now, if we were to stop here, our equation would look like this. But we got to find a y-intercept. We got to find where it starts. So let's plug in another point. I'm going to pick the last point. Remember, you could pick any of them, but if I plug in 9.37 for y, and plug in 8 here, I'm going to do a little math. 0.15 times 8 will give us 1.2. And then we got to add that to both sides. So we end up over here with 10.57 as our b value. Now, instead of just blindly trusting that we did our math right or that we picked right, remember that all of these points are on the line. So we can pick another point and plug it in and it should work. Like if I pick this point right here, that means if I plug in 4, I should end up with 9.97. And let's quick check it. We know this is -0.6. And if you do that, you end up with 9.97, which is what this point says. So now, if I want to estimate the number of flights in 2016, I'm not going to plug in 2016. Remember, we said that we're going to make this years after 2000. So what we're going to plug in instead is 16. And then it just becomes a calculator problem. So I'll have 0.15 times 16, make that negative and add it to 10.57. And we get that the number of flights will be about 8.17 million this year. So you should be able to write an equation of a line if I give you a slope and a point, but then also if I just give you 2 points. So here's a couple things to practice, and I will give you the answers tomorrow. Enjoy your night.